If you're diabetic and you've been told to stay away from fruit, all fruit, I need you to stop what you're doing and listen to me for the next few minutes. Because that advice, that single piece of oversimplified guidance that millions of diabetics are following right now, may be doing more damage to your health than the diabetes itself. Here's what I mean. If your blood sugar has been unpredictable, spiking in the morning, crashing in the afternoon, refusing to stabilize no matter how carefully you eat, and if you've been cutting out fruit entirely because your doctor or a website told you fruit has too much sugar, then what I'm about to share with you changes everything. My name is Dr. Raymond Chen. I'm a board-certified endocrinologist and metabolic health specialist, and I've spent over 4 decades studying how food, specifically the timing, the type, and the form of food, communicates with your body at a cellular level. I trained at one of the best hospital systems in the country. I practiced in Scottsdale, Arizona for 37 years. And for most of that career, I told my patients the same thing everyone else told them. Count your carbs, watch your sugar, be careful with fruit. Then, at 58 years old, I nearly died. A pre-heart attack, severe prediabetes. Me, the endocrinologist, the man who had been prescribing the latest medications, the cutting-edge diets, the textbook advice to thousands of patients. And I sat in my own cardiologist's office and realized that everything I had been taught, everything I had been teaching, was incomplete at best and actively harmful at worst. That crisis sent me on a journey I never expected. I flew to Taipei to recover my great-grandfather's herbal medicine journals, handwritten records of chrononutrition principles that Chinese medicine had understood for centuries. I tested the method on myself. In 4 months, I reversed every single marker. My metabolic health transformed. And since then, I have dedicated my practice to integrating what Western medicine gets right with what it has been ignoring for decades. Today, I'm going to give you something concrete, something you can use starting tonight. I'm going to show you the 10 best fruits that diabetics can safely eat, ranked. And I'm going to identify the 5 high glycemic fruits that are quietly spiking your blood sugar and accelerating your risk of heart attack, stroke, and fatty liver disease. And I'm going to give you the exact scientific framework, the one I use with my patients, so you never have to guess again. But first, I need to explain something that most doctors never take the time to explain to their patients. And it is the single most important concept for any diabetic who wants to eat fruit safely. Most people have heard the phrase glycemic index. Your doctor may have mentioned it, you may have seen it on a chart somewhere, but very few people understand what it actually means for their body. And even fewer know about the second number, the one that matters even more. That number is called glycemic load, and understanding the difference between these two measurements is the key that unlocks safe fruit consumption for diabetics. Think of glycemic index as measuring the speed of a car. It tells you how fast a particular food raises your blood sugar compared to pure glucose. A food with a glycemic index above 70 is considered high. Between 55 and 70 is medium. Below 55 is low. Simple enough. But here is where most dietary advice falls apart. Glycemic index does not tell you how much of that food you are actually eating, and that is where glycemic load comes in. Glycemic load accounts for both the speed of the sugar spike and the amount of carbohydrate actually in a realistic serving. It is the difference between knowing a car can go 120 miles an hour and knowing whether it is actually traveling that fast on the road you are driving. Here is a perfect example. Watermelon has a glycemic index of 72. High. Sounds dangerous for a diabetic, right? That is exactly why so many people have been told to avoid it. But watermelon's glycemic load for a standard serving, about 1 cup, is only 4. 4, because watermelon is 92% water. The actual carbohydrate content per serving is tiny. The car can go fast, but the road is very short. This distinction between glycemic index and glycemic load is the framework that changes everything. And it is the reason that blanket statements like all fruit is dangerous for diabetics are not just wrong. They are medically irresponsible. Research published in the British Medical Journal following more than 480,000 adults over 7 years found that whole fruit consumption was associated with a significantly lower risk of type 2 diabetes, not higher. And for people already managing diabetes, specific fruits, eaten correctly, were associated with better long-term blood sugar control. The problem is never fruit itself. The problem is which fruit, how much, in what form, and when. Let me walk you through the 10 safest fruits for diabetics, starting with number 10 and building toward the single most powerful fruit you can eat for blood sugar control. Number 10. Kiwi. One medium kiwi has a glycemic index of around 50 and a glycemic load of approximately 5. That puts it comfortably in the safe zone. But what makes kiwi remarkable is its fiber content combined with a specific enzyme called actinidin that actually slows the digestion of protein and carbohydrates in the same meal. Research from the University of Auckland showed that kiwi consumption improved postprandial, that means after meal, blood sugar response in people with insulin resistance. One kiwi a day, ideally with a meal rather than alone, gives you vitamin C, potassium, and blood sugar stability. Number 9. Plums. Fresh plums have a glycemic index of about 40 and a glycemic load of just 2 to 3 per serving. What most people do not know is that plums are rich in a compound called chlorogenic acid, one of the most potent natural inhibitors of glucose absorption in the gut. Think of chlorogenic acid like a traffic officer at the entrance to a highway. It slows the rate at which sugar enters your bloodstream, preventing the sharp spike that damages blood vessels and exhausts your pancreas. 2 to 3 small plums make an ideal snack, and they satisfy the craving for sweetness without the metabolic consequence. Number 8. Peaches. Fresh peaches, not canned, not in syrup, fresh, have a glycemic index of around 42 and the glycemic load of 5. They are rich in phenolic compounds that have been shown in studies published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry to inhibit enzymes that break down carbohydrates, essentially slowing sugar release the same way some diabetes medications work. One medium peach has just 15 grams of carbohydrate and nearly 2 grams of fiber. It is a metabolically friendly food that most of my diabetic patients were needlessly avoiding. Number 7. Pears. A medium pear has a glycemic index of 38 and a glycemic load of around 4. But here is the critical instruction. Eat it with the skin on. The skin of a pear contains a significant concentration of quercetin, a flavonoid that research at Harvard Medical School has linked to improved insulin sensitivity. Remove the skin and you lose much of that protective effect. The fiber in pear skin also slows gastric emptying, meaning food moves through your stomach more slowly, which is exactly the mechanism you want to prevent blood sugar spikes. Think of it like adding speed bumps to the road. The sugar is still getting to your bloodstream, but it arrives gradually instead of all at once. Number 6. Oranges. I know, you have probably been told citrus is too sweet, but a medium orange has a glycemic index of 43 and a glycemic load of just 5. The key here, and I cannot emphasize this enough, is that we are talking about eating the orange, not drinking it. I will come back to the juice issue in a moment because it is critical. The whole orange contains naringenin, a flavonoid that multiple studies suggest improves insulin receptor sensitivity. The fiber matrix of the whole fruit slows sugar absorption dramatically. The American Diabetes Association actually lists whole citrus fruits as a recommended food for people managing type 2 diabetes. This is a good moment to pause, because I want to ask you something directly. Has anyone in your life, a parent, a spouse, a friend, been told they cannot eat fruit because of their diabetes? Someone who is now missing out on the vitamins, the fiber, the antioxidants, the joy of eating something fresh and natural because of advice that is incomplete? If that person came to mind right now, I want you to share this video with them. Not later, right now while we are here together. Because what I am showing you today could genuinely change the way they manage their health. And if what I am sharing makes sense to you, subscribe to this channel, because every week I am giving you the kind of metabolic guidance that most people only get if they can afford a specialist. Number 5. Apples. There is a reason the saying exists. A medium apple with skin has a glycemic index of 36 and a glycemic load of 6. But the real reason apples belong on this list is pectin. Pectin is a soluble fiber found primarily in apple skin that forms a gel-like substance in your gut, literally trapping sugars and slowing their absorption into your blood. Research published in the European Journal of Nutrition showed that regular apple consumption was associated with a 28% lower risk of type 2 diabetes in a study of over 38,000 women. For people already diabetic, the pectin effect creates a slower, flatter blood sugar curve after eating, which is exactly what you want. Eat it whole, eat it with the skin, and eat it as a snack between meals rather than at the end of a high carbohydrate meal. Now I want to tell you about a patient I'll call Margaret. She was 69 years old when she came to see me. She had been managing type 2 diabetes for 11 years. She was meticulous. She took her medications exactly as prescribed. She had eliminated almost all fruit from her diet because her previous doctor had told her sugar was sugar, regardless of where it came from. She was eating a very low carbohydrate diet, doing everything right by conventional standards, and yet her A1C was stuck at 7.8. Her morning fasting glucose was consistently between 160 and 190. Her energy was so low that she had stopped taking her afternoon walks. She sat across from me looking exhausted in a way that went beyond tired. "Dr. Chen," she said, "I have given up everything I enjoy eating. I don't understand why my numbers won't move." Her husband was with her. He nodded quietly. "She hasn't touched fruit in 4 years. She won't even eat a single grape." When I reviewed her diet log, I noticed something. She was eating very little fiber. Her gut microbiome, the community of bacteria that plays a massive role in blood sugar regulation, was being starved of the prebiotic compounds that whole fruits provide. The very restriction that was supposed to help her was creating a secondary problem that her previous doctors had never considered. I introduced her to the framework I am sharing with you today. Small portions of low glycemic load fruits timed strategically, something I'll explain in a moment. Within 6 weeks, her morning fasting glucose dropped to between 125 and 140. Her A1C came down to 7.1, and she called my office on a Thursday afternoon and said, "I had an apple today and I didn't feel guilty." That sounds small, but you have no idea what that means to me. It does not sound small to me at all. Number 4, cherries. Fresh or frozen, not maraschino, not in syrup. Cherries have a glycemic index of just 20 and a glycemic load of around 3 per half cup serving. They are among the lowest glycemic fruits in existence. But the reason they rank number 4 on this list is not just the glycemic numbers. Cherries contain a compound called anthocyanin, the pigment that makes them red, which research published in Diabetes Care has shown may reduce fasting insulin levels and improve insulin sensitivity. They also contain melatonin, which supports overnight blood sugar regulation. A half cup of fresh cherries in the evening is one of the most metabolically sound snacks a diabetic can eat. Number 3, avocado. I know some people do not think of avocado as a fruit, but botanically it is, and it belongs on this list. Avocado has a glycemic index of 15 and a glycemic load of essentially 0. It contains no significant digestible carbohydrate. What it does contain is an extraordinary amount of monounsaturated fat and fiber, the combination that research at the Cleveland Clinic has shown to slow gastric emptying, reduce post-meal blood sugar spikes, and actively improve HDL cholesterol. For my diabetic patients who are also managing cardiovascular risk, which is most of them, avocado is not just safe, it is therapeutic. Half an avocado daily is one of the simplest upgrades a diabetic can make to their diet. Number 2, berries, specifically blueberries, strawberries, and raspberries. I am grouping them together because they share a metabolic profile that is almost uniquely suited for diabetics. Blueberries have a glycemic index of 53 and a glycemic load of 5. Strawberries have a glycemic index of 40 and a glycemic load of just 1. Raspberries are even lower. All three are packed with anthocyanins and ellagic acid, compounds that multiple studies, including a landmark paper from the University of Michigan, suggest may actually improve the function of insulin receptors in muscle tissue. Think of insulin receptors like locks on a cell door. In type 2 diabetes, those locks get rusty and the key, insulin, stops working efficiently. Berries appear to help oil those locks. A half cup of mixed berries daily is one of the most evidence-supported dietary habits I recommend to every diabetic patient I see. And number 1, the single best fruit for diabetics is grapefruit. This surprises almost everyone. A medium grapefruit has a glycemic index of 25 and a glycemic load of just 3. But the reason it earns the top position is a compound called naringin, which research published in the Journal of Nutritional Biochemistry has shown can lower fasting blood glucose, reduce insulin resistance, and, remarkably, protect the liver from the kind of fat accumulation that drives non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, a condition affecting an estimated 30 to 40% of people with type 2 diabetes. One important warning: if you are taking certain medications, particularly statins or some blood pressure medications, grapefruit can interfere with how your liver processes those drugs. Please check with your physician before adding grapefruit if you are on any of these medications. But for diabetics who are not on contraindicated medications, half a grapefruit in the morning may be one of the most powerful metabolic tools available in any grocery store. Now I need to talk about the 5 fruits you should avoid or limit significantly. Because the fear around fruit is not entirely without basis. There are specific fruits that genuinely do spike blood sugar, and knowing which ones they are is just as important as knowing the safe ones. Number 1 on the avoid list: fruit juice. Any fruit juice. All of it. I want to be direct about this because it is the most dangerous item on this list. When you juice a fruit, you remove the fiber. That fiber is the speed bump I told you about earlier. Without it, the sugar from the fruit, even from the safest fruits, hits your bloodstream like a wave. A glass of orange juice has the same glycemic impact as a glass of soda. The fiber is gone. The phytochemicals are reduced. What remains is essentially liquid sugar with some vitamins. Research from Harvard School of Public Health found that replacing 1 daily serving of fruit juice with whole fruit was associated with a 7% reduction in type 2 diabetes risk. For people already diabetic, fruit juice is not a health food. It is a blood sugar spike in a glass. Number 2, dried fruit. Raisins, dates, dried mango, dried apricots. The drying process removes water and concentrates the sugar. A small handful of raisins, about a quarter cup, has a glycemic load of 28. That is higher than many candy bars. The same amount of fresh grapes has a glycemic load of 6. The fruit did not change. The water removal did. If you eat dried fruit, your blood sugar responds as if you ate something far more concentrated and processed than you intended. Number 3, overripe bananas. This one is nuanced because a green or slightly underripe banana actually has a glycemic index of around 40, acceptable. But as the banana ripens and the starch converts to sugar, the glycemic index climbs above 70. The brown spotted banana that feels soft and sweet is essentially a different food metabolically than a firm, slightly green one. If you eat bananas, eat them firm, never ripe to the point of softness. Number 4. Mangoes. I know they are beloved, and I understand the cultural significance of mango for many of my patients. But a cup of mango has a glycemic load of approximately 12 to 15, and it contains a high concentration of rapidly digestible sugars. For someone whose pancreas is already struggling to produce adequate insulin, mango creates a demand the body often cannot meet quickly enough. If you love mango, limit yourself to a quarter cup maximum and pair it with protein and fat to blunt the spike. But for most of my diabetic patients, mango is a food to enjoy rarely and carefully. Number 5. Pineapple. Fresh pineapple has a glycemic index of 66 and a glycemic load of around 12 per cup, placing it firmly in the high-risk category for diabetics. Canned pineapple in syrup is significantly worse. The enzyme bromelain in pineapple does have anti-inflammatory properties, but the blood sugar cost for a diabetic is too high to justify regular consumption. If you want the anti-inflammatory benefit of bromelain, it is available in supplement form without the glycemic consequence. Now let me tell you about a second patient, a man I will call Victor. He was 74 years old, a retired construction foreman from Phoenix. He came to me after his second hospitalization in 18 months. Once for a hyperglycemic episode, once for what his doctors described as a mild cardiac event. His A1C was 9.2. His fasting glucose was regularly above 220. He was on 3 medications and still not controlled. He told me he had been drinking 2 glasses of orange juice every morning because, in his words, it's natural, it's fruit. How can fruit be bad? He had also been eating dried mango as a snack every afternoon because he had read it was a superfood. He was unknowingly flooding his bloodstream with concentrated sugar twice a day, every day, while his medications struggled to keep pace. When I explained the glycemic load framework to Victor, when I showed him that his orange juice was metabolically identical to drinking a can of soda, something shifted in his expression. Not embarrassment, recognition. Nobody ever explained it that way, he said. They just said, watch your sugar. Nobody told me what that actually meant. We replaced his morning juice with half a grapefruit and a handful of blueberries. We replaced his dried mango with fresh cherries. We applied the Dragon Cycle timing principles, eating his food earlier in the day when insulin sensitivity is naturally higher, pairing it with protein and healthy fat to slow absorption, and giving his body a clean window in the evening to regulate overnight. Within 8 weeks, his fasting glucose dropped from above 220 to consistently between 130 and 150. His cardiologist called me personally to ask what we had changed. 3 months later, his A1C was 7.4, the lowest it had been in 6 years. Dr. Chen, he told me at his follow-up, and his voice was different, steadier, like a man who had been given back something he thought was gone. I feel like I'm finally fighting back instead of just losing. That is what this information is worth, not the numbers, the feeling of fighting back. Here is what I want you to do starting today. Write this down if you can. First, choose one fruit from the top 10 list and add it to your diet this week. Start with berries if you are not sure where to begin. A half cup of mixed berries with breakfast is the single most accessible change you can make right now. Second, if you are currently drinking fruit juice of any kind, stop today. Switch to whole fruit. This one change alone can meaningfully reduce your daily glycemic load. Third, eat your fruit earlier in the day. Morning and early afternoon, when insulin sensitivity is naturally at its highest. Avoid fruit in the evening, when your metabolic rate slows and blood sugar regulation becomes harder. Fourth, never eat fruit alone. Always pair it with a protein or a healthy fat. A handful of nuts, a spoon of almond butter, a boiled egg. This combination slows gastric emptying and flattens the blood sugar curve. Fifth, if you eat bananas, check the firmness before you eat them. Firm and slightly green means lower glycemic impact. Soft and spotted means leave it for another day. Before I close, I want to be clear about something. Everything I have shared with you today is educational. It is meant to help you have better conversations with your own doctor, not to replace your medical care. If you are managing diabetes with medication, do not change anything without speaking to your physician first. What I am giving you is a framework for understanding, not a prescription. One more thing. In my great-grandfather's journals, the ones I recovered in Taipei, the ones that ultimately saved my own life, there is a concept that translates roughly as this: the body does not need to be fought, it needs to be understood. For too long, diabetics have been at war with food, afraid of fruit, afraid of flavor, afraid of the simple pleasure of eating something that grew in the sun. That fear is not protecting you. In many cases, it is making things worse by eliminating the very fiber, the very phytochemicals, the very microbiome support your body needs to regulate blood sugar naturally. You are not broken. Your body is trying to communicate with you. And now you have a better language to understand what it is saying. If this video helped you today, I want to know. Type the word fruit in the comments right now. It tells me this content is reaching the people who need it, and it helps me keep making it. If someone in your life is managing diabetes and living in unnecessary fear around food, share this video with them tonight. You might be giving them back something they thought they had lost. I am Dr. Raymond Chen. Take care of yourself. And remember, understanding is always the first step toward healing.